So in this hobby tips video, I am going to go over different ways that you can complete your miniature bases. Now, for most people who are familiar with the Citadel paints line, Citadel likes to sell you these texture paints, like a Grell and Badlands that I have here, to complete your miniature bases. Now, GW is ripping you off selling you these paints. See, these pots are 24 milliliters, and the USD MSRP is $7.80 for one of these pots. Now, if you go to an online retailer, like I did when I originally bought this years ago, I only paid $6.39 plus tax. So you get a little bit of a savings, but it's not much. If you were going to pay full retail for this, you're paying 33 cents per milliliter, and this container is not even enough to do the bases for an entire army. You would need to buy multiple of these pots, and it's just not worth it. And here's why. I'm going to show you a number of alternatives. So on my desk here, I've got these Liquitex texture gels. This is literally the same base that is in the texture paints from GW. But this 237 milliliter container, 8 ounces for people in the US, is $12.78, which comes out to just 5 cents per milliliter. And just look at the size difference. You get so much more of the texture gel than you do if you buy the Citadel product. Now, these textures come in a variety of different textures, so I have 3 different ones here. This is resin sand. We've also got black lava, which is really cool. When you put it down, it almost looks like a shiny volcanic glass, and it has like little sparkly bits in it once it dries. And this is a thicker grain of resin sand. Now, these aren't colored, so there's a couple of different ways you can use them. You can either apply them neat to your base, and then you can paint it up and dry brush it once it's dry. Or you can take a little bit out, put it like in a small plastic cup, and you can actually mix your paint color, any acrylic paint works, into the gel, and then apply that to your base. And you end up getting the same exact effect that you would get if you used the Citadel texture paints. Now, other hobby companies also have their own variations of these products. So over here, I've got some of the Vallejo texture acrylic gels. This one here dries clear and simulates the effect of water. This one is desert sand, and this last one is brown earth. And now for these Vallejo textures, they're very reasonably costed. So each one of these containers is 200 milliliters, and for that size, it's only going to cost you $11.70 US, which comes out to 6 cents per milliliter, just one more penny per milliliter than buying the plain Liquitex mediums. And now I don't have a physical container to show you for the last one. I'll put a picture up on the screen. But AK Interactive, a modeling company out of, I believe, Spain, they also have their own version of these pre-colored textures. And for a 250 milliliter container, you're only going to pay $10.62 USD, which comes out to 4 cents per milliliter. So almost anywhere you get your texture paint, aside from GW, you're going to save a ton of money. And one of these, like this Vallejo texture, I have based an entire almost 4,000 point army of Horus Heresy Mechanicum, and I still have like half of this container left. I have literally done hundreds of bases, and I still have plenty more of this product to use. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to use these today, so I'm going to go ahead and remove those out of the table. But I am going to do a base using this brown earth texture, and we'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. So give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and get my brush and everything that I need, and I'll be back in a bit. Alright, so I'm back. Oh, dropping stuff. So, I've got a silicone sculpting tool. Now, if you don't have one of these, you can use a paintbrush. That's totally fine. You just want to make sure that as soon as you're done doing your base, you clean out that brush immediately. So these gels, it's a thick acrylic medium that will act as a glue. So you definitely don't want that drying in your brush. But what I'm going to do, when you unseal these, they have this little styrofoam cap so that no extra moisture gets into the container. Just going to use my silicone tool to scrape some of that up so we don't waste anything. And then just apply it to the base. And just spread it around just like you would a Citadel texture paint. And as you're applying this, you can see there's fine grit in the mix. And because this will act as an adhesive, all that grit will be locked in place once it dries. And now with these silicone sculpting tools, because the texture won't stick to it, you can actually use it to build these peaks by stippling and create nice texture on your base. Now, depending on what brand you're using, they may have, different formulas, and it may require a longer drying time or a shorter drying time. With these Vallejo ones, I believe it says, so 30 to 45 minutes for that to dry. And then once it's dry, we're going to dry brush it with a lighter color, and in just those 2 stages, you'll have a finished base. Now, I'm going to prep another one of these because I'm going to show you a neat little trick. So in a lot of my videos, you'll see that I use the Geek Gaming Scenics base ready range. And so I'm going to prep another one of these, and then I'm going to dip it in some base ready mix. And because this acts as an adhesive, when it dries, it'll grip the base ready, and then we can dry brush the part that we didn't cover. All right, so I got that covered. Let me go ahead and grab my base ready, and then I'll show you how to apply it. All right, so we're back, and I've got my base ready Mediterranean soil. Let me go ahead and open this. And now, just so you guys know, I've used this in some of my other videos. And what this is a super fine grit sand that's mixed with super short grass and bits of rock and some pebbles that really you just put an adhesive on your base, you go ahead and dunk it in this, and you just let it dry and you're good to go. And if you want, so all of the colored flocking and everything in here, it's not color fast. So if you seal it with this matte scenic spray, which I'll show you later on, it allows some of the colors to bleed and mix together, so you actually get some really, really, really nice blends on your base without having to do any work. So now, this base that we have prepared in the previous clip is still wet, so I'm just going to go ahead, and now I don't want to fully cover it because I still want some of that dirt to shine through. So I'm just going to sprinkle it like that on part of the base, and you can go ahead and press down on the rocks. Just tap off the excess like that. Cover up that one patch. And then we're just going to let that dry. And just like the plain base, once it's dry, we'll go ahead and dry brush that corner. Alright, so while we're still here with the base ready out, I will show you how you normally apply it if you're just going to use the base ready and not mix it with a texture. So just take a little bit of your scenic glue, and now I do recommend using the fast drying basing glue from Geek Gaming Scenics. It's not your standard PVA. It's actually a slightly different formulation, and it will dry super quick and give you a really strong bond. So just going to use my silicone tool, move that around, and when you apply this on your base, you want it really, really thick. Yeah, there we go, that's good. And again, if you're not using a silicone tool, if you have to use a brush, you want to make sure that you wash your brush out really, really good as soon as you're done. Then we're just going to sprinkle that on. Tap away the excess. And we'll just give that a minute to let that glue bite into it. And then we'll go ahead and hit it with some of the spray so that you guys can see how it mixes on the base. Alright, so let me clear this away, put down some tissue so that we can spray our scenic spray, and I'll be back in a second. Alright, so we're back. I got some tissue down. Now, if this has been sitting for a little while, it can separate, so you want to give it a good shake. Go ahead and get everything mixed up. And now, obviously, because this is a spray, it will be a little bit messy, which is why we've got our tissue down. So now, all we're going to do is just go ahead and soak it. Just like that. And now what I like to do is go ahead and wipe the excess off of my base rim with a wet brush. And you might need to clean your fingers off on the paper towel. And when you do that, you need to make sure that you clean your brush out. I'll set that down, let the bottom of the base get clean. And then I will grab something with a smaller rim than the base, and then just sit that on top and let it air dry. So now that everything is covered, I'm going to go ahead and let that dry for the recommended 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll go ahead and dry brush those bases, and I'll be back in a minute. Alright, so we're back. I've let these dry for a little bit, and as you can see, it's retained all of that texture that we had put in to the paste. And then here is the Geek Gaming Scenics only base. Alright, so now all we're going to do is dry brush a little bit of Morghast Bone onto the dried paste areas. Give this a good shake. And I'm going to use an Army Painter large dry brush. And so now, got to do, take our paper towel, work that into the bristles. Every so often, just test it out and see how much paint's still left on the brush. And once you've got most of it off, take your base and just lightly drag this over the top. That paint will catch all of that texture that's on the base. You can rotate the base around, make sure you hit all of those little peaks. Just like that. Now real fast we'll get the other base that was half and half. And then for a highlight tone, I'm going to use a little bit of Wraith Metal. You can test it out on your hand or on the paper towel. Just check how much paint's left in there. And then we're going to do this second dry brush. And this is where that texture really, really starts to pop. And we'll hit this one too. Just like that. And there you go. Now, another thing that you can do with these acrylic texture paints, let me clean out this dry brush real fast, is actually use weathering powder on top of them to color them without actually having to paint them. Which this is a little bit of a time saver and helps you get some really cool effects. So I had used the desert yellow sand on this base, and then I've got some Secret Weapon Miniatures weathering powder here, terracotta earth and dark yellow. And now all I'm going to do with this is put a little bit of terracotta earth in the center of the base. This will be the shadow area that should be right under the miniature. Just go ahead and kind of stipple that on. And then so that we don't contaminate the other color, you could just brush off the excess. It's just dust, so it'll come right off. grab this wrong one. Let's grab that dark yellow. And then with this color, just gonna stipple around the terracotta on the outside ring of the base. If you want, you can leave a little bit of the yellow texture paint around the very rim, and that will kind of help act as a highlight around the rim of the base. And now you can go ahead and kind of blend the powder together where they meet. See, that looks awesome. Now, that is dust, and in order to fix it to the base so that it won't go anywhere, what you actually want to do is take a little bit of white spirit and just wet the entire base. So we're going to use a pipette, get some white spirit, and then we're just going to add drops until it's all wet. Now, once that's dry, the white spirit will help it stick to the acrylic texture paint underneath. However, it's not as strong as glue. So, you're not in danger of it rubbing off so long as you're not being rough with the base. Once you glue your miniature down, I wouldn't take your finger and, rub on it. You can take it off, but if you're picking your miniature up by the miniature, by the rim of the base, that pigment isn't going to go anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead, let that white spirit dry on that base, and then we'll paint the base rims, and then we'll be done. Be back in a bit. Alright, so now that all of that white spirit is dried, you see you get a really nice shadow area in the center. Then you kind of got your mid-tone that kind of goes around that, and then you've got your highlight around the rim. So now all we're going to do is take some black surface primer, and we're going to paint our base rim. Don't need a whole lot of it, just a few drops. A little water on the brush. Now, as you can see here, I can rub lightly, and that pigment doesn't really move. Now, you are going to get a little bit off on your finger, but not that much. All you want to do is really just avoid touching it, and once you get your miniature on the base, you won't really ever have to touch it again. So just go around, and this is really great. You get really good coverage in just one coat. And then because it's primer, it'll stick to that plastic base rim, no problem. All right. And it's as simple as that. At that point, once your base rim's dry, you can go ahead and super glue your minis to the base. I do recommend using a thick gel super glue. You don't want to use a thin You want a really good bond. But once you're done, your miniature base will look like this. So now if you wanted, you can add some basing tufts, some different static grass tufts. I used Army Painter tufts for this base. And to show you an example of a finished desert model, got this guy. Alright, so that's all I've got for you today. Hopefully you learned something new. And at the very least, I tried to help you guys save some money. If you're interested in picking up any of the Liquitex products, you can get those from Blick Arts. I have a link down in the description that'll take you right to their acrylic texture paint section of the site. It is an affiliate link, so if you do buy something when you click that link, I will get a little bit of a kickback, which is a huge help to the channel at no cost to you. Some of the other products I've shown you, like the Secret Weapon pigments, you can get those from the Secret Weapon Miniatures website, and the Vallejo acrylic texture paste and the AK Interactive. You can find those on Amazon, is honestly where I normally get mine in the US. A lot of friendly local hobby stores, at least in my area, don't carry those specialized products. So Amazon tends to be the best place to get those. But let me know down in the comments if you guys found this helpful. Let me know if there's any techniques that you saw today that you guys want to try out for yourself. And keep slaying the gray, hobby warriors. I'll see you in the next one.